fellow members of the negotiating panels, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends of the peace process, good evening and welcome. For the last 7 days, from 15th of February to 21st of February 2011, the Norwegian government has hosted and facilitated a full round of formal talks between the government of the Philippines and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. The two parties have thus succeeded in reopening formal talks for the first time since 2004. The two parties have engaged in extensive negotiations. They have addressed root causes of the armed conflict by discussing substantial issues on the peace agenda. They have met in the reciprocal working committees on social and economic reforms, reviewed the status of the work since 2001, and discussed agenda, mechanics, and schedule for further meetings. The two parties have, after 7 years, reconvened the Joint Monitoring Committee of CARIL, the Comprehensive Agreement on Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law. They have also discussed concept and mechanics related to future work on political and constitutional reforms. Reports have been given on issues related to the Joint Agreement on Safety and Immunity Guarantees, on prisoners and detainees, and on confidence-building measures alike. The two parties have exchanged credentials, reaffirmed previous agreements, and agreed on general timeframes, and even suggested venues for further meetings and due process. Now the talks have just ended, and I think it is fair to say that the two panel chairpersons and their respective delegations have done an outstanding job, both in terms of working tirelessly for long hours, giving their best efforts in contributing constructively in the negotiations, reaching out to the other party, and also importantly making real progress, producing concrete results. In spite of the tough challenges facing the parties, and it hasn't always been easy. Panel chairpersons, Attorney Alexander Padilla and Mr. Louis Landoni, are hereby lauded and congratulated by the third-party facilitator for being able and capable of moving the peace process forward in the right direction. I would also like to extend our appreciation to the hard-working chairpersons of the respective working groups, Mr. Ednar Bayangirang and Ms. Violeta de Lima, heading the negotiations in the important field of social and economic reforms. I also want to congratulate chairpersons José Luis Martín Chito Gascon and Fidel Acaili for making progress in the discussions related to the Joint Monitoring Committee and guidelines for this committee to monitor implementation and achieve objectives of the Comprehensive Agreement on respect for human rights and international humanitarian law. And last but not least, Attorney Pablito Sanidad and Professor José María Sison, who have been discussing, preparing for work to be done in the field of political and constitutional reforms. The delegates have all proved to have negotiating skills and will and stamina, and talks have been mostly amiable and for the better part cordial, and certainly constructive and fruitful, and then at the end they have proved also to be productive. As far as the third-party facilitator is concerned, we did not expect any better than this. So both parties deserve credit for showing courage, willingness, ableness to address core issues on the peace agenda, and to take the first ambitious steps as they were set out in the formal agenda for the talks, and for being able to conclude this formal round, the first, again, round since 2004, on such a positive and forward-looking note. On our role, in 2001, the government of Norway was asked to act as a third-party process. We expect tough times ahead of us. It will not be easy, and the parties face many hurdles and great challenges. But Norway will continue to stay committed and patient, and a demonstration of this, an assurance to the parties of our seriousness and our dedication, was the attendance of our political leadership during the talks. We had the pleasure of having our State Secretary, Mr. Espen Barth Eide, grace the opening of the talks on the 15th of February. We also had the honor of having the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jonas Gahr Støre, meet and engage in discussions with both panel chairpersons and their respective panels on the 18th of February. Finally, a full round of formal talks between the government of the Philippines and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines has been concluded successfully, we think. This was a new beginning for the peace process, and a good one it was indeed. Congratulations. It is my great pleasure to introduce the two panel chairs, and I give the floor first to Attorney Alexander Pavilla, please.
Thank you, Ambassador Turelu, Chairperson Louis Eladoni, distinguished members of both panels, the NDFP and the Philippine GPH. Friends and colleagues, good evening. Tonight concludes a week of hard bargaining between our two panels, the GPH and the NDF. And up to the last minute, literally, we were not sure whether we could come to terms enough to move the peace process to another round. Perhaps the process is weighed down too much by the pain and baggage of the past that will clearly take many more rounds of negotiations to overcome. The GPH panel is committed to stay the course of peace. The goal of a just and enduring peace has compelled us to come to the table and to stay at the table. Our commonalities have propelled the process forward. Our common ground includes an abiding love of country, a commitment to our countrymen and women to still the guns of war, so that we, our children, and our children's children can start afresh and marshal all our resources to build our nation. And a pledge to ourselves to unlearn the language of war and open ourselves to the imperatives of peace. What difference does a peace settlement make in the life of a country and its people? All the difference in the world. But let me be more modest and ask, what difference does 1 week make for this and future generations? It is the difference between a door shut tight and windows opening up to let fresh air in, dissipating the cobwebs and reminding us of a time when all of us, across the bargaining table, shared in the vision of a Philippines that is free, fair, and sovereign. Waging war is hard, but waging peace is tougher. Last month's informals and the past week's hard bargaining provide ample proof of the glitches that have snagged negotiations and the turbulence that lies ahead. The path to peace, the path of peace, is not an easy one, but we have a few things going for us. Our tour yesterday showed us how the Vikings, those fearsome warriors, ventured far and wide because they stayed the course. How the Vikings, with a healthy streak of pacifism, initiated trade, launched enterprises, and founded settlements throughout Europe. The Viking challenge to us is to produce our own Knuts and Tures, and Ainas and Idas. Not after many generations, but to transmute our warmongering and our hawkish tendencies into peace advocacy and activism within our generation. A week ago, we in the GPH panel shared the sense of dread articulated by Peace Advisor Ging Deles about these talks becoming the end of the beginning, a dead end with both sides unforgiving and in the process making losers of us all. Though we are not certain how this first formal round will end, let me just say that in these past days we have done the following. We have agreed on a joint statement that expresses our common achievements and aspirations. We have agreed on a time frame possibly as early as August 2012, to produce the substantive agreements on socio-economic reforms, on political constitutional reforms, and on the end of hostilities and disposition of forces, and leading to a final political settlement. We have reactivated the reciprocal working committees on social and economic reforms, which shall soon be consulting with stakeholders. We have convened the working groups on political and constitutional reforms, or PCR, leading to the eventual formation of the reciprocal working committee on PCR. We have reconvened the Joint Monitoring Committee of the Comprehensive Agreement on Respect for Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law, paving the way for the JMC's full operations. We have undertaken unilateral ceasefires for the duration of the talk as one of several confidence-building measures that facilitated the participation of many of the NDF consultants, Rafi Bailosis, Beth Principe, Randy Echaniz, in our talks. On the other hand, the GPH is likewise gratified and acknowledges that the NPA has released a former soldier and 2 policemen, namely retired Army Sergeant Mario Veluz, PO3 George Sabatin, and PO3 Gerber Tugate, all from Mindanao. And so, friends and colleagues, tonight finds us on certain terrain, on the zigzag path to peace. It will be harder, perhaps than anything else we have done in our lives to stay the course, which in the first place asks us to keep faith in the process. Are we really up to this? But we have taken the first step, and having taken that first step, are we ready for the next steps until finally we shall have signed a peace pact? That will be the easy part. Implementing it will even be tougher. But having spent this week breaking bread, arguing over grammar and syntax, periods and paragraphs, singing karaoke together, we know that comrades in arms can make the best comrades in peace. That is, if we, all of us, so wish, and they so will. May I therefore say, mabuhay, first to our RNG friends, who do their Viking ancestors proud in helping nurture and facilitate this difficult process. Mabuhay. Second, mabuhay. Mabuhay. Second, to the NDFP panel, including Ka Choma, Ka Louie, Julie, Connie, Fidel, Rafi, Randy, Nonoy, Danny, and the younger generation of lawyers, Beth, Marie, and everyone. And of course, last but not least, to our own members of our own GHP delegation who have given their utmost as well. All of you Filipinos and patriots all. Mabuhay po. Mabuhay po Pilipinas. Mabuhay ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure for me to give the floor to Mr. Louis Alato.
Ambassador Kirilu and other members of the Royal Norwegian Government Facilitation Team, Ida Marstein, Fredrik Steen, Lisa Golden, and Aina Holm. Attorney Alexander Padilla, Chairperson of the GPH Negotiating Panel, members of the GPH Negotiating Panel, Attorney Pablito Sanidad, Mr. Edgar Dayanghirang, Ms. Maria Lourdes Sison, and Ms. Georgette Conculada Malonzo, and other members of the GPH delegation. There is no doubt that we, the negotiating panels of the GPH and the NDFP, together have achieved this past week. We have moved the peace negotiations forward, breaking the 6-year impasse